2 million years ago, the world was untamed and ruthless. Humans shared the land with creatures far larger, faster, and stronger than themselves. Every day was a test of survival, as they scavenged, hunted, and hid from predators that ruled plains, forests, and rivers. Every choice carried life or death consequences. The first humans learned to read the signs of danger, to track prey, and to cooperate with their small bands, to increase their chances of survival. They discovered fire, turning it into a shield and a weapon, and began crafting tools that gave them an edge against the beasts around them. Nights were the most perilous, when darkness brought predators close, and the air filled with the sounds of snarls and roars. Humans adapted, developing strategies to hunt safely, to gather food, and to protect their young. The struggle was constant, and the lessons were written in blood and bone. This is the story of those early humans, their battles with the animals that hunted them, and the courage, ingenuity, and resilience that allowed them to endure. It is a journey into a time when survival was uncertain, and the line between life and death was measured by wit, strength, and cooperation. Sorry for the interruption. Where are you tuning in from? Drop it in the comments. 2 million years ago, the Earth was a place of constant danger and wonder. Vast plains stretched under a relentless sun, and dense forests hid shadows where predators waited in silence. The air carried the calls of animals now long vanished, and the ground trembled with the steps of creatures so large they seemed like moving mountains. This was not a world made for human comfort. It was a battlefield of survival where every day demanded vigilance and every night brought fear. In this world, humans were not rulers. They were newcomers, fragile and uncertain. Their numbers were small, and their tools were simple. They walked the same paths as lions, hyenas, and saber-toothed cats, but without the claws or fangs to match. To survive, they relied not on strength or speed, but on watchful eyes and quick minds. Each moment required choice. Should they move forward into open plains where predators prowled, or retreat to the safety of trees where food was scarce? The dangers were relentless. At watering holes, beasts of every kind gathered. Mammoths and rhinoceroses crushed the earth as they drank. Crocodiles waited just beneath the surface, and giant cats crouched in the tall grass ready to spring. For a human to approach meant risking everything, yet without water, survival was impossible. These early people lived at the mercy of nature, never certain that tomorrow would come. Night brought its own trial. Without fire, the dark belonged to others. Eyes glowed at the edges of camp, and the silence was broken by the roars of lions or the eerie laughter of hyenas. Children were clutched close as adults huddled together for safety. Sleep was shallow and filled with dread. In the morning, they counted themselves lucky if all remained alive. The land itself was both gift and threat. Wild fruits and roots sustained them, but to gather meant venturing into territory already claimed by beasts. Carcasses left behind by predators offered meat, yet carried the risk of another ambush. Nothing came without danger. Nothing came without cost. And still humans endured. They watched, they learned. They remembered where the animals roamed and when the fruits ripened. They marked the patterns of migration and the cycles of the seasons. In this forgotten world, every lesson was written in sweat and blood, and every mistake could mean death. Yet with each trial, something stirred in them, a determination that no beast could break. This was the stage upon which the human story began. A place untamed, unforgiving, and alive with both terror and possibility. In the earliest days of human struggle, survival meant something very different than it does today. Our ancestors were not masters of their world. They were not feared predators commanding the land with strength or weapons of power. They were fragile beings moving carefully through a landscape where nearly every creature could outmatch them. To live meant to watch and to wait, and often to take what others left behind. When a lion finished its kill and dragged the choicest parts into the shade, when a pack of hyenas stripped flesh from bone and left only fragments, humans crept forward. They approached with caution, scanning the grass for hidden eyes, listening for the growls that signaled danger had not yet passed. The bones and scraps that remained might mean the difference between life and death. To claim them was a risk, but hunger pressed them forward. Imagine the scene. A small group approaches the scattered remains of an antelope. the smell of blood still heavy in the air. Birds circle above, waiting their turn. Hyenas linger at the edges, watching and laughing in their strange, haunting way. With sharp stones in hand, humans cut quickly at the flesh that remained. They break bones to reach the marrow, rich in fat and energy. Their eyes never stop moving. At any moment the predators might return. One mistake could bring disaster. This was the life of the first hunters, who were more often the hunted. They lacked claws and sharp teeth, but they had persistence and a will to endure. Scavenging became strategy. What others left, they turned into strength. They learned to track not only prey but also the hunters of that prey. The roar of lions became a signal. The silence of vultures circling became a map. Each sound, each sign became part of a growing knowledge of how to live in a world that seemed determined to see them gone. Evidence of this struggle remains in the bones of animals found at ancient sites. Marks from stone tools lie beside the deep grooves of lion teeth. Human cuts layered over the wounds of other predators tell the same story again and again. Our ancestors arrived second. They claimed what they could only after others had fed. Yet out of this dangerous dependence came a slow transformation. The ones who returned alive remembered the patterns. They saw opportunity not just in what was left behind, but in the chance to act before the beasts returned. Each small risk built courage. Each scrap taken from the jaws of predators gave them strength to take one step further toward becoming hunters themselves. In these moments of fear and desperation, the foundation of human survival was laid. Not as conquerors of the wild, but as fragile beings who endured by daring to steal life from the very mouths of beasts. Across the vast plains of the ancient world, danger never hid for long. The land belonged to the predators, and humans moved like shadows among them. The saber-toothed cat prowled with its massive fangs gleaming like ivory blades. Its body was built for ambush, and one strike could bring down beasts many times the size of a man. No human could hope to match its strength or speed. To see one too late was to face certain death. Then there were the giant hyenas towering over their modern relatives. They hunted alone or in loose groups, and their jaws could crush bone with terrifying ease. They were scavengers, but also skilled killers, and humans knew well that even a single mistake could draw their attention. Their laughter echoed across the night like a warning that survival was never promised. Cave lions roamed as kings of the grasslands. Larger than the lions we know today, they moved in silence, their golden bodies blending into the tall grasses. They struck with precision and often hunted in groups, making them nearly unstoppable. A human band caught unaware would not have the strength to resist. To live among cave lions was to live with constant fear. Wolves, too, filled the plains, moving in disciplined packs. They chased prey for long distances, wearing them down with endurance and strategy. For humans who lacked speed, their approach was a nightmare. A pack of wolves could surround and overwhelm in moments. Their howls carried across the land, reminding everyone that the hunters were always near. Yet humans learned. They could not outfight these predators, but they could outthink them. They studied the signs of movement in the grass, the silence of birds overhead, the sudden alarm calls of other animals. They learned that vultures circling in the distance might draw predators, and that certain scents on the wind warned of danger before eyes could confirm it. The land itself became their teacher. At night they huddled together in numbers, knowing that unity was their only defense. Sharp stones and wooden spears gave them courage, though they were no true match for the beasts. Fires once mastered would later become their shield, driving predators back into the shadows. Until then, awareness was their only weapon. To detect danger before it struck was the line between life and death. In this world of hunters, humans were never safe. Each day was a gamble, and every step demanded caution. Yet, with patience and memory, they survived. By watching the predators that ruled the plains, they learned the first lessons of how to endure in a land that seemed determined to devour them. In the world of our ancestors, the land shook beneath the weight of giants, and humans were small among them. Herds of mammoths moved like living mountains across the plains, their tusks curling like great ivory spears, while their shaggy coats protected them from bitter cold. To see a mammoth was to feel both awe and fear, for one step from such a creature could crush a person without effort. They were a source of wonder, yet also a reminder of how fragile early humans truly were. Not far behind came the mastodons, heavy and broad, with shorter, stockier tusks built for pushing through dense forests. They carried an air of quiet power as they stripped branches and toppled trees. To the small bands of humans, they were both an obstacle and a temptation. Their flesh could feed many mouths, and their hides could provide shelter, but to approach them was a desperate gamble that could end in tragedy. Giant bison also roamed in countless numbers across the open plains. Their horns curved wide and sharp, and their massive shoulders carried muscle that no human weapon could easily pierce. They thundered together in herds that shook the earth like storms. To chase them without care meant certain death, yet to hunt, even one, could mean survival through harsh seasons when food was scarce. These giants were not enemies in the way predators were, yet they were forces of nature. Humans respected them, feared them, and sometimes dared to challenge them. With sharp stone tips tied to wooden spears, with traps dug into the earth with coordinated effort, they found ways to strike at the massive bodies of these beasts. The risk was enormous, but the reward was greater than anything smaller prey could give. Meat for many days, bones for tools, hides for warmth, and sinew for binding. Every part of the fallen giant was used for survival. Hunting such creatures demanded courage and planning. A single hunter stood no chance, but together with patience and strategy, humans learned to turn their weakness into strength. They drove animals toward cliffs where the fall would bring them down. They trapped them in swamps where their great weight became their undoing. They circled them with fire and noise, pushing them into panic. What nature denied in physical power, humans replaced with ingenuity. To walk among these giants was to live in constant reminder of both danger and possibility. They could kill without effort, yet they could also sustain life in ways no other creatures could. In their shadow, humans learned to balance fear with daring, and in that balance they forged the beginnings of mastery over a world that was still so much larger than themselves. When the sun sank and the sky turned black, the world of early humans changed into a place of constant fear. Without fire, the night belonged to others, and every shadow carried danger. The vast plains and forests that seemed open during the day became cloaked in darkness, where eyes glowed and predators stirred. For small bands of humans, nightfall was not a time of rest but a time of dread. They gathered close together, huddling in small groups, with children pressed against their mothers and elders sitting watchful and silent. The sound of the wind through the grass was broken by the distant roar of lions that moved like ghosts around the camp. Sometimes the roars came closer, and the growl of a lion could be heard just beyond the circle of bodies. The humans had no walls, no fire, and little to defend themselves with. Their only protection was their numbers and their ability to stay alert. Hyenas laughed in the darkness, their calls echoing in the night air. These scavengers were bold and cunning, testing the edges of the human presence, circling close enough that their eyes could be seen flashing in the starlight. A single misstep, a child straying too far, a careless sound, could bring them rushing in with snapping jaws. Humans held still, their hearts pounding, their ears straining to catch every sound. Wolves, too, moved under cover of night, their howls rolling across the land like a warning that death was never far away. To hear a pack meant danger on all sides. Humans clutched their crude spears tighter, knowing they were no true match for a disciplined hunt. Every rustle in the grass, every crack of a branch carried the weight of threat. Sleep came in fragments, if it came at all. The darkness itself was the enemy. Without the light of fire, every shadow seemed alive, and every sound grew louder than it was. Fear kept them awake, yet fear also kept them alive. They listened, learned, and adapted. They began to choose their resting places more carefully, seeking high ground or dense thickets where predators could not easily approach. They kept watch in turns so that some eyes were always open and some ears always listening. These nights of terror carved deep lessons into the human spirit. They taught caution, unity, and vigilance. They reminded humans that survival meant more than strength. It meant awareness and the will to endure long hours of dread. Each dawn that broke over a group still alive was a victory. Each night survived was another step in the long journey of becoming something more than prey. There came a moment when everything changed, a moment when humans no longer faced the night with only fear in their hearts. That moment was the birth of fire. At first it was not theirs. Lightning split the sky and set trees ablaze, or lava spilled from the earth and burned the land. Flames roared and crackled, and humans watched from a distance, both frightened and drawn to its glow. They knew it was powerful and dangerous, yet something in them understood it could be more than destruction. Over time they learned to keep it, a branch carried from a burning tree, a spark preserved from a smoldering log. They guarded the flames as if guarding life itself. For when the fire was theirs, the night no longer belonged to the beasts. Light pushed back the darkness, and its heat gave warmth against the bitter cold. Predators who once prowled at the edges now paused. Their glowing eyes kept farther back, their growls softer, less certain. Fire had become a barrier between man and beast. With fire came courage. Camps that had once been hushed and trembling found new strength. The crackle of flames brought comfort to weary hunters and restless children. The smoke curled upward, carrying safety with it. No longer were nights filled only with terror. For the first time, humans could rest and dream beside the warmth of their new companion. But fire was more than a shield. It was also a weapon. A torch held high could drive back hyenas and lions. A wall of flame set in dry grass could trap prey or protect the weak. With fire, humans were no longer helpless scavengers. Something new, something more. It also opened doors to survival in ways unseen before. Meat roasted on the flames became easier to chew and safer to eat. Roots and plants hardened by heat turned into food that could sustain life in lean seasons. The warmth allowed humans to live in colder lands, to push into places where survival once seemed impossible. Around the fire, stories began to form. Shadows danced on stone as voices told of hunts, of dangers, of ancestors. Fire gave humans more than survival. It gave them memory. It gave them the bond of sharing something greater than fear. The invention of fire was the turning point. It was the moment the balance shifted, when humans no longer crouched silent in the night, but stood with light in their hands and strength in their hearts. The beasts still roared in the distance. But for the first time, it was clear that the world would not belong to them forever. The laugh of the hyena was one of the most haunting sounds our ancestors ever knew. It carried through the night, sharp and mocking, echoing across the plains like a reminder that survival was never certain. To humans, the hyena was not only a predator, it was a rival. A creature that wanted the same prize, the same food, the same scraps of life carved from the bones of the wild. When lions brought down prey and fed their fill, the hyenas moved in with boldness, snapping and snarling to claim what was left. When the hyenas finished, humans waited, watching from the edge of the grass, hoping to gather marrow-rich bones and scraps that could keep them alive. But often it was the other way around. Hyenas lurked at the edges of human camps, waiting for the moment when fear broke and caution slipped, and then they too would steal what they could. Archaeologists today still find the evidence of this rivalry. Scattered bones show the story clearly. Deep tooth marks from powerful jaws lie beside the fine cuts of stone tools. In some places, the hyenas fed first and humans cut afterward. Others, humans carved the meat, but the bones later bear the crushing bite of hyena teeth. It is the record of a constant struggle played out again and again across the ancient world. Hyenas were clever and persistent. They hunted as well as scavenged. They tested the courage of humans circling at night, glowing eyes just beyond the reach of fire. They were not afraid to challenge, and sometimes they succeeded. A lone hunter, or a small child taken in the dark, became part of the price of living beside these relentless rivals. Yet from this rivalry, humans learned lessons. Every encounter forced them to become sharper, more coordinated, more daring. They learned to guard their kills, to build fires brighter, to keep watch longer. They learned that tools could break bones faster than teeth, and that marrow hidden deep inside could be theirs before the hyenas returned. What was once desperation slowly became advantage. The laugh of the hyena may have chilled the night, but it also pushed humans to grow. The contest for scraps and bones became a contest of survival, of cunning against cunning, strength against strategy. Over time, the balance began to shift, and though the hyenas still laughed in the darkness, humans carried with them something more enduring than fear. They carried the will to endure, and the knowledge that even the most relentless rival could be faced. The hunt for giants was the greatest gamble our ancestors ever faced. To bring down a mammoth or a woolly rhinoceros meant survival for weeks, perhaps even months, but the risk was as heavy as the reward. For these creatures were vast and powerful, their size alone enough to scatter hunters who stood too close, yet hunger pressed humans toward courage, and so they planned together, weaving patience and strategy into the heart of the chase. No single hunter could face such a beast alone. The mammoth towered above them, its tusks curved like enormous blades, capable of skewering any who dared approach. The woolly rhinoceros was no less dangerous, built like a moving fortress with thick hide and a horn that could tear through flesh and bone in an instant. To fail against such giants was not simply to go hungry, it was to invite death upon the whole band. So the hunters worked as one. They studied the herds, watching for the old, the weak, the young, those that strayed from the protection of the group. They moved together in silence, communicating with gestures and shared glances. For their weapons, we were simple spears of wood tipped with stone, and their only advantage was the power of many minds acting as one. The strategy was often the same. They drove the chosen animal into a trap, sometimes toward the edge of a cliff where one misstep would bring the giant down, sometimes into a swamp where its great weight would drag it deep into the earth. Sometimes they encircled it with fire and noise, forcing panic until the beast could no longer escape. Each plan demanded precision, and every mistake carried a cost. When the strike came, it was chaos. The giant roared and thundered, the ground shook beneath its rage, spears flew, hunters shouted, and the air filled with dust and fear. Some did not rise again after such hunts, but when the beast finally fell, the reward was beyond measure. Meat enough to feed the entire group, hides to keep out the cold bones, to shape into tools, sinew to bind weapons. Every part of the animal became part of human survival. The feast after such a victory was more than food, it was triumph. It was proof that fragile beings armed only with courage and stone could topple the lords of the land. Around the fire they shared the bounty and the story of the hunt, and with each retelling their identity grew. They were no longer only scavengers at the mercy of beasts, they were hunters of giants, and the earth itself bore witness to their rising strength. Life among the beasts was a constant reminder that humans did not rule the world, but instead lived at its mercy. Claws and fangs were everywhere, and the price of each mistake was often blood. The remains left behind tell the story with silent certainty. Skeletons show the marks of teeth, deep grooves carved by lions, by saber-toothed cats, by hyenas that crushed bone with ease. These were not just accidents of chance, they were the scars of encounters where humans stood face to face with predators, and many did not walk away. Imagine a camp settled at the edge of tall grass. The hunters return weary from the day, carrying little food, hoping for rest. As the night falls, lions begin to circle. Their golden eyes flicker in the dark. The humans clutch their crude spears. But the beasts are patient and strong. In a sudden rush, the lions strike. The camp erupts in chaos. Spears fly, shouts rise into the night, and then silence follows. In the morning, only broken weapons and scattered bones remain. The lesson is carved into memory, but at a terrible cost. Other encounters were no less fierce. A saber-toothed cat, ambushing a lone forager near a watering hole. A pack of wolves running down a straggler, too slow to keep pace. A hyena bold enough to snatch a child from the edge of the fire. These stories are written in both bones and memory, and they shaped the way humans lived. They taught caution. They taught the need for unity. They taught that vigilance could never falter. Archaeologists uncover more than tools and shelters. They uncover proof of the battles fought in those early ages. Human remains, bearing the unmistakable signs of predator attack, crushed skulls, shattered limbs, bite marks that match the jaws of great cats. Each discovery whispers the same truth. Survival was never easy. It demanded a toll, and the toll was often life. Yet from this blood and loss humans gained knowledge. They learned to set guards at night. They learned to build fires stronger. They learned to read the signs of predator movement in the grass and in the silence of the land. Every encounter, even those paid for with death, became a lesson passed down through stories, through memory, through the very shaping of human instinct. Claws and fangs ruled the world, and humans were fragile against them. But by enduring, by remembering, and by refusing to yield, they slowly turned fear into wisdom, and wisdom into survival. In the beginning, humans faced the world with little more than their hands and their wits, and against claws and fangs, that was never enough. But slowly the first sparks of invention appeared, and with them the balance began to shift. A stone, picked up from the ground, could crush a bone or split a skull. A shard of flint struck against another stone could create an edge, sharp enough to slice meat and cut through hide. The simplest of tools turned weakness into strength and survival into possibility. Over time, these stones grew more refined. Hands shaped them with patience, striking flakes away until points emerged and edges gleamed. Hunters carried them tucked into belts or gripped tightly as they walked through dangerous lands. Stone was no claw and no fang, but in human hands it was something new. It was a weapon born not of nature, but of thought. From sharp stones came spears. A long branch hardened in the fire with a point fixed to its tip gave distance between hunter and beast. No longer did a human need to stand within reach of a charging predator. With a thrust or a throw, the spear carried danger outward. A group of hunters with spears could face an animal many times their size, driving it back through the power of unity and precision. It was one of the first true equalizers. As knowledge deepened, so too did invention. Spears tipped with carefully shaped stone points became more deadly. Hunters learned to fasten blades with sinew and resin, binding stone to wood in ways that made weapons both durable and sharp. Each improvement meant greater chances of survival. Each innovation meant fewer lives lost to beasts that once ruled without challenge. The bow would come later, and with it distance itself became a weapon. A string pulled tight, a stone-tipped arrow released in silence, and suddenly humans could strike from far beyond the reach of teeth and claws. The bow turned the hunter into something the predators had never faced before, a being that could kill without closing the gap. These tools were more than objects. They were proof that thought and creativity could rival muscle and fang. They marked the moment when humans began to rise not through size or strength but through the power of invention. With every stone shaped, every spear cast, and every arrow released, the balance of the world tilted further and further away from the beasts and toward the fragile but clever hands of humankind. Water was life, but water was also danger. Rivers and lakes drew every creature of the land, and for humans each visit carried the risk of death. The sun beat hard across the plains and thirst drove them forward, yet every step closer to the shore meant stepping into the territory of beasts that ruled the water and the shadows around it. Crocodiles waited just beneath the surface, silent and unseen. Their bodies blended with the muddy banks, their eyes just above the water. A careless move, a hand reaching too far, or a foot placed in the wrong spot, and the jaws would snap shut. With crushing force dragging prey into the depths, bones found near ancient rivers bear the marks of such encounters, proof that many lives ended in the grip of those armored hunters. The hippos, too, were masters of the waters. Massive in size, fast despite their bulk, and fiercely territorial, they charged without hesitation. Their wide mouths gaping with tusks that could slice through flesh and bone, no spear or stone tool could match their fury. To stumble too close to a hippo was to meet sudden and violent death. Yet the dangers did not end in the water. Predators stalked the edges, knowing the herds and the hunters would gather there. Lions crouched low in the tall grass, their eyes fixed on the weak, or the distracted hyenas laughed in the distance, circling closer with each moment of human vulnerability. Even saber-toothed cats lurked near the watering places, using silence and patience to ambush those who dared to lower their guard. For humans to drink meant more than quenching thirst. It meant organizing with caution. One or two approached while others stood guard with sharpened stones and spears, eyes scanning the horizon and the shadows. The sound of birds suddenly lifting from the trees or the silence of smaller animals could mean danger was close. Each sip of water carried the weight of awareness and fear. Still they came, for without water there was no life. They learned the patterns of predators. They learned the safer times to drink when the heat drove beasts into shade, or when darkness kept them away. They adapted, watching and waiting always, calculating the risks. At the watering holes, life and death were balanced on the edge of each choice. To survive there was to face the power of beasts on land and in water, yet through patience and vigilance humans endured and carved another lesson into their long struggle to live. For early humans, the cave was both sanctuary and trap, a place of shelter from the wind and rain, yet also a place already claimed by beasts that feared nothing of man. The dark mouths of caves promised safety, but to step inside without caution was to risk stepping into the lair of a predator stronger and swifter than any human could hope to defeat. Bears were among the first rivals for these stone shelters, massive bodies filling the passageways, claws scraping against rock, and a roar that shook the walls. To disturb a bear in its cave was to invite certain death. Even a group of hunters, armed with spears, had little chance against such power. The bones found in ancient caves tell the tale of battles lost of humans who entered seeking warmth and never walked back into the light. Cave lions too claimed these spaces, golden eyes glowing in the darkness. They lay silent until prey wandered too close. They struck with speed and precision, dragging their kill deeper into the shadows where no human dared follow. To hear a lion's growl echo from within the stone was enough to turn even the bravest back into the open night. Leopards favored the heights and shadows of caves too. Slipping in and out with stealth, they left behind the bones of prey carried to their hidden dens. Their presence was a warning carved into the very floor of the caves, a message that these places belonged first to the hunters with claws. And yet humans returned again and again, for the walls of caves were more than shelter. They became places of memory and of story. The earliest art still survives, images drawn in red and black, the outlines of mammoths, bison, lions, and bears. Some believe these drawings were warnings or prayers or attempts to capture the spirit of the beasts themselves. Whatever the meaning, they reveal how deeply humans understood that caves were not empty. They were shared spaces with adversaries both feared and respected. To claim a cave required courage, fire, and unity. Flames lit against the walls, pushed back. The darkness and smoke drove out lurking predators. With persistence, humans transformed the most dangerous places into the safest refuges. What once belonged to beasts became homes where families could gather and stories could be told. The cave was never only stone. It was a stage where the battle for survival played out in shadow and flame, and where the first sparks of human imagination burned beside the memory of the beasts that once ruled the dark. The story of early humanity is written not only in tools and fire, but in the scars left on bone. The earth holds silent witnesses to the struggles of those who lived and died long ago, and their remains speak of a world steeped in violence. Every shattered rib, every fractured skull, every gouge carved deep into bone tells of a clash with teeth and tusks and claws. The record is not one of peace but of constant peril. Archaeologists uncover skeletons that bear the unmistakable marks of predation. Skulls crushed by the weight of trampling beasts, ribs cracked by the impact of great hooves and femurs, split open by the powerful jaws of carnivores. The grooves, etched into bone by saber-toothed fangs, or the deep scratches left by the claws of lions reveal how fragile human life was. Each body buried in the earth is a reminder of battles fought at the edge of survival. Battles often lost. Some of these injuries healed, which tells us that early humans endured suffering and lived on carrying their wounds as permanent reminders of the danger that stalked them. Others did not heal, and those bones rest as final testimony to the cost of missteps or misfortune. A slip too near the water's edge could end with crocodile jaws closing shut. A stumble in the tall grass might mean an ambush by leopards or lions. A wrong step in the path of a mammoth could leave the hunter trampled beneath tons of muscle and bone. This blood debt was not one-sided. Humans too left their mark on the bones of animals. Long gashes cut by stone blades show where flesh was stripped from carcasses. Cracked open marrow bones speak of desperate hunger. Spears lodged in the ribs of giant bison or woolly rhinoceroses prove that humans learned to turn their fear into deadly resolve. Every hunt was dangerous, and every victory carried its own scars. Yet for every animal slain, many humans paid with their lives. The soil preserves more than bones. It holds the memory of struggle. It tells of children who never reached adulthood, of mothers and fathers lost in sudden violence, of entire bands erased in the night by predators stronger and swifter. The debt of blood was constant and inescapable, and yet humanity endured because survival demanded it. In this record of violence, we see both fragility and strength. The bones whisper of pain, but also of resilience. Each wound, each scar, each mark of death became part of the story that carried humanity forward, shaping a species forged in the crucible of endless danger. In the ancient world, danger did not always come with a roar or the thunder of hooves. Often it arrived in silence, with eyes that glowed in the darkness and paws that pressed softly into the earth. Leopards and panthers were masters of stealth. Their strength was great, but their true weapon was patience. They could wait motionless for hours, hidden in the branches of trees or crouched low in the tall grass. Their bodies blended with shadow, and when they struck, it was swift and merciless. Humans feared these silent stalkers more than most predators. Lions could be heard at night, their roars rolling across the plains. Hyenas announced their presence with cackling laughter. But leopards and panthers were ghosts. They came without sound and vanished without trace. They did not chase their prey across the open savanna. Instead, they watched, they studied, they chose the weakest, the smallest, the distracted. Children were often the first to fall. Archaeological evidence shows the scars of such attacks. Tiny bones, marked with punctures from sharp fangs, skulls with holes driven by powerful jaws. These are the remnants of lives ended before they had begun. Entire bands of early humans lived in constant tension, not knowing when the next shadow would descend from a tree or strike from the tall reeds by the water's edge. Fear of these predators shaped the way people moved and lived. Camps were built near cliffs or high ground when possible, not for the view but for defense. Watchers were chosen to remain alert through the night. Eyes strained against the dark, ears tuned for the faintest rustle, because silence itself meant danger. For the young and the vulnerable, every step beyond the firelight was a risk. Mothers clutched infants tightly, fathers walked with stones in their hands. Children were warned never to wander, yet despite vigilance there were losses, and with each loss came grief, but also new lessons. Each disappearance taught humans to sharpen their awareness, to read the signs of grass, bending slightly to sense the presence of unseen eyes. Leopards and panthers were not only hunters of humans, they also competed directly for prey. When humans managed to kill an antelope or a boar, the sound of butchering could draw silent stalkers into the camp. A single swipe of a paw could scatter an entire group and claim the prize. Humans learned to keep fires burning brightly, to guard carcasses fiercely, and to retreat quickly when the odds turned against them. The legacy of these predators runs deeper than bones. They shaped human behavior at its core. They instilled the constant vigilance that still echoes in us today. The fear of being watched from the shadows, the unease felt when walking alone. At night, these instincts are ancient memories, passed down from ancestors who lived with silent hunters at their side. In every rustle of grass, in every flicker of shadow, we carry the memory of the leopards and panthers who stalked without sound. The story of survival is not only about battles fought with weapons or hunts won through courage, it is about endurance in the face of the unseen. Humanity learned to live with predators that could not be heard until it was too late, and in doing so, humans forged a vigilance that never truly sleeps. In the harsh world of 2 million years ago, every sound, every movement could mean life or death. Humans lived in a constant state of alertness, surrounded by predators that could strike without warning, and by prey that could vanish in an instant. Among these creatures, wolves were both feared and respected. Their sharp teeth and hunting skill made them formidable opponents, but their intelligence and social structure hinted at something more. At first, humans and wolves were competitors. They both hunted the same herds and scavenged the same carcasses. Both were opportunistic, and both relied on keen senses and cunning to survive. Clashes were inevitable. Sometimes humans were injured. Sometimes wolves were driven away. Yet, over time, a remarkable shift began to take place. A mutual understanding emerged, born of proximity and necessity. Wolves began to linger near human camps, drawn by scraps and the smell of cooked places of meat. They watched from the shadows, silently learning the patterns of their new neighbors. Humans, in turn, noticed the advantages of this silent partnership. Wolves could warn of danger with keen ears and eyes attuned to movement. Humans who could read the signals of the wolves found themselves safer from other predators and more successful at hunting. Over generations, selective bonding occurred. The wolves that were tamer and less aggressive tolerated human presence, and humans nurtured these animals, feeding them and protecting them. These early partnerships were fragile at first, but they set the stage for something extraordinary. The transformation from enemy to ally was gradual and required patience. Wolves that tolerated humans began to accompany hunting parties. They ran alongside humans, tracking prey, and sometimes even helping to corner it. Their sense of smell could locate hidden game. Their speed could chase down the swiftest animals. Their presence deterred other predators, keeping human camps safer at night. The bond was reinforced with food and attention, and over time wolves began to rely on humans for sustenance, just as humans relied on their new companions for survival. This alliance changed the rhythm of life. Wolves became guardians and companions. Their howls at night served as warnings of approaching danger. Their keen senses detected lurking predators. Humans began to see the value of cooperation and empathy, of training and communication. These early dogs became extensions of human skill tools, shaped by necessity and guided by mutual respect. The bond enhanced survival in a world where one mistake could mean death. The domestication of wolves into dogs marked a turning point in human history. It created an entirely new layer of strategy and protection. It allowed humans to expand into new territories, to hunt more effectively, and to defend against predators that had once been insurmountable. The relationship, forged on the edges of fear and necessity, became one of trust and interdependence, and it set the precedent for all future partnerships between humans and animals. The story of survival was forever altered by the creatures, once feared, that became the most loyal allies of mankind. Life in the ancient world was defined by the rhythm of the seasons and the availability of food. There were times when game was abundant, herds moved across the plains, and rivers teemed with fish. Humans thrived during these periods, storing what they could and feasting when opportunity allowed. But scarcity was inevitable. The harsh reality of nature ensured that lean times would arrive when the rivers dried up and the herds moved beyond reach. During these seasons of scarcity, humans faced the cruel truth of survival. Hunger sharpened the senses and forced bands to make difficult decisions. Each day became a struggle to find enough sustenance to keep the body alive. Every journey into the wilderness carried risk. Predators thrived when humans were weak. They were faster, stronger, and constantly alert, taking advantage of desperation. Groups of humans were forced to migrate, following the patterns of prey and the availability of edible plants. This movement was never easy. Terrain that was previously avoided for its dangers suddenly became necessary to traverse, to be crossed. Steep cliffs, navigated, and dense forests entered, where shadows concealed deadly predators. Each step was calculated, and each decision weighed against the possibility of injury or death. Families were divided by necessity. Some stayed behind to guard what little resources remained, while others ventured into uncharted territory. Children and the elderly were particularly vulnerable and required careful attention. The strength of the group was measured not only by skill and courage, but by cooperation and the ability to make sacrifices for the survival of all. During these migrations, humans encountered predators that had previously been avoided. Lions and leopards, hyenas, and packs of wolves were more aggressive when faced with starving prey. Humans had to rely on every tool and every skill they possessed. They sharpened stones into weapons, built traps, and relied on early dogs to warn of danger and assist in hunting. The balance between predator and prey shifted constantly, and humans had to adapt quickly or perish. Scavenging became more common during these periods. Carcasses left by predators were precious sources of protein. Bones were cracked for marrow and every edible part was consumed. Yet scavenging brought humans into direct conflict with the creatures that had killed the animals in the first place. Encounters were frequent and often violent. The seasons of scarcity shaped human behavior. It taught caution and patience. It emphasized the importance of mobility and observation. Humans learned to read the landscape, the tracks of animals, and the signs of approaching predators. Scarcity of food instilled ingenuity. It forced humans to cooperate, share, and strategize in ways that would lay the foundation for survival over millennia. The harshness of these periods left lasting marks on the human body and psyche. Malnutrition and injuries were common, yet resilience was born from struggle. The memory of these lean seasons is etched into the story of humanity. It is a testament to endurance, the capacity to adapt, and the relentless drive to survive in a world where life was never guaranteed, and danger lurked in every shadow. The skies above the ancient world were not empty. They were alive with predators. Creatures that ruled the air with sharp eyes, powerful wings, and deadly talons. Among the most fearsome was the Harshest eagle, a bird of such immense size and strength that it could carry off prey as large as a human. Child or adult, these eagles were apex hunters of the sky. Their presence altered the behavior of all creatures below, including humans. Humans learned quickly that survival depended not only on watching the ground, but also the sky. The flapping of great wings, the shadow passing over the camp, or the distant screech could signal imminent danger. Hunters would pause mid-step, scanning the trees and the plains for movement. The awareness that death could strike from above added another layer of constant vigilance. The Harshest, eagle, and other large raptors hunted with precision. Their eyes could detect the slightest motion, and their talons were capable of puncturing flesh and breaking bone. Their attacks were swift, leaving little time to react. A careless child, straying from the group, or an adult distracted by a hunt, could suddenly become prey. The air was as dangerous as the forests, the plains, and the rivers, and humans had to adjust their strategies accordingly. Campsites were chosen with care. Sheltered areas were preferred under cliffs, in dense groves, and near cliffs where raptors could be seen approaching in advance. Fires were used not only to keep predators at bay at night but also to signal danger during the day. Watchers kept eyes on the sky, scanning constantly for shadows and glints of sunlight on feathers. Survival required teamwork and communication. The signal of an eagle's approach could send the entire group into two-shit action, forming defensive circles and protecting the most vulnerable members. Hunting in open areas became more dangerous. Humans learned to use cover to their advantage, to move silently, and to coordinate attacks with one another. The lessons from encounters with raptors influenced the design of tools, weapons, and even clothing. Protective coverings became important. Shields and spears were used to defend against sudden aerial strikes. The knowledge that the sky itself was hostile demanded innovation and adaptability. Children were trained early to respect the sky, to recognize patterns, and to move cautiously in open spaces. The memory of fallen companions served as a constant reminder of the lethality above. Early humans developed a deep awareness of timing of flight patterns and seasonal behaviors of these massive birds. They integrated this knowledge into daily routines, ensuring that camps were never left vulnerable. Death in the sky was a relentless threat. It tested human intelligence, bravery, and cooperation. The predators of the air shaped behavior and survival strategies just as much as the predators on land. Over generations, humans adapted. They would become more vigilant, more strategic, and more aware of the invisible dangers carried on wings. Survival was no longer only a matter of strength or speed, but of knowledge, perception, and the ability to respond to threats from every direction. The terror of the skies became a permanent feature of life, molding human societies in profound ways. The world of 2 million years ago was a place of constant struggle, where humans had to fight for every meal and every moment of safety. Over generations, humans began to change the rules of survival. They learned to use tools and weapons, with precision to coordinate hunts and to control fire in ways that transformed the landscape and altered the behavior of every predator around them. Weapons became extensions of human will. Sharpened stones, spears, and later bows allowed humans to strike from a distance to wound and to kill without placing themselves directly in danger. Their aim improved, their timing became precise, and their understanding of animal behavior deepened. They studied tracks, patterns of movement, and feeding habits, transforming hunting into a calculated strategy rather than a desperate gamble. Fire became both shield and sword. It was used to cook food to keep warm and to scare off predators. Flames could be carried as torches in the night to illuminate hiding places and to chase dangerous animals away from camps. The roar of fire could deter lions and wolves who would otherwise have stalked unsuspecting humans. Fire also allowed humans to occupy territories that were previously too dangerous, offering both protection and the ability to expand into new lands. Strategy extended beyond individual encounters. It involved cooperation within groups. Humans communicated silently with gestures and signals, coordinated movements, and set up ambushes to trap large prey or to defend against predators. Packs of wolves or lone leopards that had once dominated the land began to find humans difficult opponents. Coordinated attacks and protective tactics meant that humans were no longer merely reacting, they were planning and anticipating. Hunting became more sophisticated. Humans began to work together in ways that mirrored the cooperative instincts of the predators they faced. They surrounded herds of mammoths or bison, driving them toward cliffs, traps, or waiting hunters. Balance of power slowly shifted. Humans could strike first, and with superior planning, they could turn formidable beasts into sources of food, tools, and clothing. Even apex predators began to avoid humans. A lion that might have attacked a lone hunter now had to consider the danger of an entire band armed and alert. A hyena pack faced the risk of coordinated retaliation. Humans exploited the setter's environment, understanding, hiding spots, water sources, and terrain features to gain advantage. The intelligence and adaptability of humans became a force that predators had never encountered. Over time, humans altered ecosystems. The presence of fire shaped vegetation patterns and hunting pressure influenced the behavior and population of animals. The once absolute dominance of predators was challenged by a species that combined cunning, cooperation, and technology. Humans were not invincible, but they were formidable. Their ability to adapt to threats and to innovate gave them the edge. Survival increasingly depended on skill and foresight, rather than pure strength. The turning tide was not sudden. It came gradually as knowledge passed from one generation to the next, as strategies were refined and tools improved. Humans learned to respect the dangers of the wild but also to manipulate them. Their mastery over fire weapons and cooperative tactics began to redefine the predator-prey relationship. The hunters had become formidable, and the hunted included those who once ruled the land. The ancient world slowly but inexorably changed as humans asserted themselves as a force to be reckoned with. The giants of the ancient world roamed the plains and forests with an awe-inspiring presence. Mammoths towered above the landscape, their tusks curved like the arms of great trees. Saber-toothed cats prowled silently through the underbrush, and giant sloths moved with deliberate strength through the forests. These creatures had dominated their ecosystems for millennia, shaping the land and challenging every animal that shared their world, including humans. At first, humans were small and cautious. They observed the movements of these giants from a distance. They learned the patterns of mammoth herds, the sleeping habits of saber-toothed cats, and the feeding grounds of giant sloths. Survival demanded respect for their size, strength, and ferocity. Every encounter was dangerous and every mistake could be fatal. Humans scavenged bones and hides left behind by nature and predators. They studied every sign, learning to anticipate the actions of these massive animals. Over generations, humans became more than observers. They began to hunt with intention and planning. They coordinated groups to drive mammoths toward natural traps, cliffs, or ambush points. Spears sharpened stones, and later more sophisticated Tools allowed them to pierce thick hides and strike vulnerable areas. They tracked and studied their prey, learning the strengths, weaknesses, and behaviors of these colossal creatures. Their success depended on patience, knowledge, and cooperation. Each successful hunt brought food and resources for the group. Hides were used for clothing and shelter, bones for tools and firewood, and meat fed the community. Yet the relentless pressure of human hunting began to take its toll on the populations of these giants. The more humans expanded into new territories, the more they followed herds and pushed predators from their natural ranges. The giants found fewer safe areas to feed and reproduce. The disappearance of the mammoths, saber-toothed cats, and giant sloths was not immediate. It occurred over centuries as human technology and strategy improved. Fire became a tool to manipulate landscapes, to drive herds, or to clear forests for settlement. Hunting became systematic and efficient. The giants that had once ruled the land could not reproduce fast enough to keep pace with human predation. Their numbers dwindled silently and invisibly until they vanished from the world. The extinction of these massive animals left silence in their place. The plains and forests that had echoed with the calls of mammoths and the growls of saber-toothed cats became quieter and more empty. New species filled the void, but the presence of humans had permanently altered the balance of life. The giants that had shaped the landscape and challenged every creature within it were gone, leaving only bones and memory as evidence of their existence. This vanishing of the giants was a turning point in the relationship between humans and nature. Humans had become the dominant force, their intelligence and cooperation able to change ecosystems forever. The world would never again be the same. The lessons of the vanished giants served as a testament to the power of human innovation, persistence, and the profound impact of a species learning to master its environment. The battle for survival was never easy, and it was never without consequence. Humans emerged from the shadows of the great predators and the towering giants as victors. Their skill, cunning, and cooperation allowed them to claim the land and bend it to their needs. Yet the victory was not without cost. The world that had once been filled with mammoths, saber-toothed cats, giant sloths, and other colossal creatures had changed forever. Every step forward was hard fought, every meal earned through strategy, patience, and danger. Every encounter with a predator taught lessons in vigilance and courage. Over generations, humans learned to anticipate the movements of beasts, to avoid the deadly strikes of claws and fangs, and to use fire and tools to their advantage. They tracked herds, coordinated hunts, and defended their communities against the stealth and strength of apex predators. They became the masters of their environment. Yet mastery came with sacrifice. As humans thrived, the megafauna diminished. The forests and plains that once echoed with the calls and footsteps of giants grew silent. Their disappearance transformed ecosystems in ways humans did not fully understand. Some species thrived in the absence of predators, while others struggled to adapt. The balance of life shifted, and the world became a place shaped more by human hands than by nature itself. Every extinct mammoth or saber-toothed cat left a void that could never be filled. The cost of survival was written in bones and landscapes, and in the lessons passed from one generation to the next. Children learned to respect the dangers of the wild, to move with caution, and to cooperate with others for safety and success. The memory of fear became a tool shaping behavior, ensuring that vigilance was never abandoned. Even as humans grew confident and powerful, the shadows of the predators that once hunted them lingered in their instincts and their stories. Communities grew more complex as humans controlled fire and tools and developed strategies for hunting and defense. Cooperation became a necessity, and social bonds strengthened. Hierarchies emerged, and leadership guided the group through danger and scarcity. These advances secured food and shelter and allowed humans to expand across continents. Yet each step of progress was built on the disappearance of the giants that had shared the land. The legacy of these early struggles echoes through time. Humans carry within them the memory of survival, the imprint of fear, and the knowledge of how to dominate environments and species. The lessons of the past inform the present and shape the way humans interact with the natural world. The price of survival was never measured in gold or monuments. But in the silence left by the vanished creatures, the transformed landscapes, and the cautious wisdom passed down through countless generations. In the end, humans won the battle against beasts. They claimed their place as the dominant species on Earth. They survived the terror of claws, fangs, tusks, and wings. They learned to hunt, to defend, to cooperate, and to adapt. But their victory reshaped the world and set the stage for the future. The megafauna were gone, ecosystems were forever altered, and the echoes of fear and dominance continue to resonate in the human story. Even to this day,